Zach Elliott, and this is Feel Free to Argue. I'm going to read you something, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. Israel's bigwigs attacked at dawn on a wide front. The president in Germany, the prime minister with a giant entourage in Poland, the foreign minister in Hungary, his deputy in Slovakia, the culture minister in France, the information minister at the United Nations, and even the Likud party's Druze Knesset member, Ayub Kara, in Italy. They were all out there to make florid speeches about the Holocaust. Wednesday was International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Israeli public relations drive like this hasn't been seen in ages. The timing of the unusual effort, never have so many ministers been deployed across the globe, is not coincidental. When the world is talking Goldstone, we talk Holocaust, as if to blur the impression. When the world talks occupation, we'll talk Iran, as if we wanted them to forget. Won't help much. International Holocaust Remembrance Day has passed. The speeches will soon be forgotten, and the depressing everyday reality will remain. Israel will not come out looking good, even after the PR campaign. On the eve of his departure, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke at Yad Vashem. "There's evil in the world," he said. "Evil must be stamped out at the beginning." Some people are trying to deny the truth. Lofty words, said by the same person who only the day before, not quite in the same breath, uttered very different words, words of true evil, evil that should be extinguished at the start, evil that Israel is trying to hide. Netanyahu spoke of a new migration policy, one that is evil through and through. He malevolently lumped together migrant workers and wretched refugees, warning that they all endanger Israel, lower our wages, harm our security, make us into a third world country, and bring in drugs. He zealously supported our racist interior minister, Eli Yeshai, who has spoken of the migrants as spreaders of diseases such as hepatitis, tuberculosis, AIDS, and God knows what else. No Holocaust speech will erase these words of incitement and slander against migrants. No remembrance speech will obliterate the xenophobia that has reared its head in Israel, not only on the extreme right as in Europe, but throughout the government. We have a prime minister who speaks about evil, but is building a fence to prevent war refugees from knocking at Israel's door. A prime minister who speaks about evil, but shares the crime of the Gaza blockade, now in its 4th year, leaving 1.5 million people in disgraceful conditions. A prime minister in whose country settlers perpetuate pogroms against innocent Palestinians under the slogan "price tag," which also has horrific historical connotations, but against whom the state does virtually nothing. This is the prime minister of a state that arrests hundreds of left-wing protesters against the injustices of the occupation and the war in Gaza, while time grants mass pardons to right-wingers who demonstrated against the disengagement. In his speech yesterday, Netanyahu's equating Nazi Germany with fundamentalist Iran was no more than cheap propaganda. Talk about degrading the Holocaust. Iran isn't Germany. Ahmadinejad isn't Hitler. And equating them is no less spurious than equating Israeli soldiers with Nazis. The Holocaust must not be forgotten, and there is no need to compare it with anything. Israel must take part in the efforts to keep its memory alive, but in doing so, it must show up with clean hands, clean of the evil of their own doing. And it must not arouse suspicion that it is cynically using the memory of the Holocaust to obliterate and blur other things. Regrettably, this is not the case. How beautiful it would have been if on this International Day of Remembrance, Israel had taken the time to examine itself, look inward, and ask, for example, how it is that anti-Semitism has reared its head in the world precisely in the past year, the year after we dropped white phosphorus bombs on Gaza. How beautiful it would have been if on this International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Netanyahu had declared a new policy for integrating refugees instead of expulsion, or lifting the Gaza blockade. 1,000 speeches against anti-Semitism will not extinguish the flames ignited by Operation Cast Lead. Flames that threaten to not only Israel, but the entire Jewish world. As long as Gaza is under blockade and Israel sinks into its institutionalized xenophobia, Holocaust speeches will remain hollow. As long as evil is rampant here at home, neither the world nor we will be able to accept our preaching to others, even if they deserve it. Now, I thought this was a good article. Not terribly surprising, not that different from things that I've read on this channel before. The point I wanted to make is that the author of this piece is Gideon Levy, and the piece was published in Haaretz, which is probably one of the most famous Israeli newspapers. The point that I'm trying to make is, you heard the savagery in this. You heard the anger. Do you hear this in the United States? Do you think this would have been published as the editorial opinion of any paper in the United States? I don't think so. The thing that's shocking to me, and I've read critiques that have said this, to be true, aside from just this one anecdotal example, but in Israel, there is a much more robust debate about the wisdom of what Israel is doing than there is in this country. And I'm going to provide a link. I've provided this link before, but I'm getting new subscribers all the time and they may not be familiar with it. There's a website called If Americans Knew, and it looks at, in a very cold and objective sort of way, how many deaths have occurred and how those deaths have been recorded, how those things have been reported in the U.S. Mass media. And I think it's one of the most revealing things that I've ever seen, because it shows you the enormous disconnect between what is actually happening in the Middle East, and specifically in the Israel-Palestine conflict, and what is reported here. You need to go to this site and you need to see how even things that we consider to be fairly objective, like the New York Times, fall into the same trap of over-reporting things that the Palestinians perpetrate against the Israelis, and under-reporting systematically the atrocities that are committed by the Israelis against the Palestinians. Now, I'm not going to fault anybody for having a warped view of the situation, at least not until you saw this video. Now, after you see this video, you're going to go to If Americans Knew, if you haven't seen it before, and you're going to look at that, and you're going to see how this conflict has been systematically misrepresented in our media. And you'll understand why the kind of healthy, robust debate that occurs in Israel, even though it's not achieving the results we'd like, there's at least a debate there, is not occurring in this country. In any event, this has been Zach Elliott, and as always, you can certainly feel free to argue. Take care, everyone.